Hello friends and welcome to Zonadiscgolf. We're gonna see today one of those topics that everyone talks about, which is the weight of the discs. Some discs are made with heavy or light configurations. This is a Felon. This is the classical version with this 173 grams, and this one is a light version which is 159 grams. They put some bubbles in the plastic, so make even with the same mold, the exact same size and shape, it's lighter. What does it imply? We remember the second law of Newton, which says that force is equal to mass times acceleration. That means that if you have a definite force, if the mass is lighter, the acceleration will be higher. So we say, okay, so this is, let's say, 15 grams lighter, so it's 10% lighter. Okay, so if I throw a mass that is 10% lighter, the acceleration will be 10% higher. So this will fly faster than this one because it's lighter. Okay, let's come back to remember on chapter 1, the example of the cannon. That we throw our cannonball, we put our powder, we shoot, and the cannonball flies. If we have a 10 kilo cannonball and we repeat the experiment with a 5 kilo cannonball, the acceleration will be double. That's correct. The cannon is fixed on the ground, and that is absolutely correct. But when we throw a disc, we are not like a cannon. We act with a biomechanical kinetic chain. So when we throw a disc on a backhand like this, okay, our hips turn the torso turns the shoulders, the shoulder the arm the forearm, the wrist, the fingers, and finally the disc. So we could argue, okay, am I throwing the disc or my arm is the thrower, or is it also a little bit being thrown? That's true. When I turn my hips and my shoulders, I have to move my arm, not only the disc. This is not like a cannon and a cannonball. This is more complex, so I have to move my arm. So I should have to include the weight of my arm into the equation. A human arm weighs around 5% of the weight of the body. I am 90 kilos, so it should weigh some 4.5 kilos. There has been some studies. One of them is about the cricket, and they studied the velocity, the release velocity of the ball using balls of different weights. The standard cricket ball weighs 156 grams, so it's comparable with a flying disc. The swing is not the same, but it's we could compare it to make an idea. They found that every 100 grams that the ball was lighter, they gained around 1.1 meters per second. If we multiply by 3.6, we get around 4 kilometers an hour. So 100 grams lighter ball gives you 4 kilometers an hour extra. If we make the 175 grams and a 150 grams, which is a bit the extreme, that is 25 grams. Following that, it should be more or less 1 kilometer an hour. So the difference is quite small, because when you are throwing something very heavy, let's come back again with the shot put example. If I throw a 7 kilo shot ball and then I change it by a 5 kilo, I will throw faster. If it's 3 kilos, I will throw faster, 1 kilo faster. But there comes a time when you have 500 grams or 300 grams or 200 grams that the difference is not that relevant, because the problem is the speed at which you can move your hand. In this example, there are some people that have a lot of fast twitch fibers in their muscles, and some that have slow fibers. So some people are able to throw faster regardless of the weight of the disc, so that we cannot really change. So the idea is, in the equation that they found in the study of the cricket ball, they found that the speed was inversely proportional to the sum of the mass of the ball, let's say the disc, plus 1/3 of the mass of the arm. And that is what we were saying. Okay, 1/3 of the arm is, let's say, being thrown, and 2/3 are throwing. Okay, so there is some dead weight here that we have to throw. So if my arm is 4.5 kilos, 1/3 is 1.5 kilos. So the difference between a light and a heavy disc is 1.5 plus 150 grams is 1,650 grams, and this one is 1,675 grams. So okay, it's 25 grams difference, but now you have to divide it by 1.6 kilos. So the difference is very small in percentage. I'm not sure, is it 1%, 2%, whatever, but the difference is very small. So using a lighter disc using a 10% lighter disc does not give you 10% more acceleration. It can give you 1-2%, because you have to include 1/3 of the weight of your arm, because you are not a cannon, you are a biomechanical kinetic chain. Okay, so we gain a little bit of speed, release speed, and what happens next? This equation of force equals mass times acceleration is also applied for the rest of the forces during the flight. So the aerodynamic forces that we have just studied, they don't change. What it changes is the acceleration that they generate. Those two discs are exactly the same. If I throw it all two of them at 80 kilometers an hour, the drag force will be exactly the same. But this disc is 10% lighter, so force equals mass times acceleration. If this one is 10%, if its mass is 10% lower, its acceleration, in this case, the deceleration, will be 10% higher. So even though the drag force is the same, it will slow down this disc 10% faster than this one. So the fact of getting a lighter disc, what does is amplifies all the aerodynamic forces. The drag will be higher, but also the lift, the glide, the lift that the disc generates, the lift is the same. What is higher is the acceleration that this lift causes. The force is the same, but the acceleration is higher because the mass is lower. So a lighter disc will tend to rise up faster. And the turn and the fade, which we already know that are caused because of the gyroscopic precession caused by this lift, will be also amplified. But when we amplify both the turn and the fade, as we saw when we studied the atmosphere, the temperature, the altitude, etc., we feel the effect more powerful in the turn, because we are throwing faster. The percentage of the flight is higher on the turn phase than in the fade phase, and a small deviation in the beginning of the flight generates a way bigger amount of difference in the position of the disc. The other argument about lighter discs, some people say, okay, when I throw uphill, I throw a lighter disc because I will reach higher. Okay, it seems true, but it's not exactly true. Let's suppose that we throw our disc absolutely vertical, to simplify, and that we are going to neglect the aerodynamic effect. When we throw it, at the moment that it releases our hand, it only has kinetic energy. Kinetic energy, you know, it's 1/2 times the mass times velocity squared. And when it reaches the apex and it goes to the highest point and begins to fall again, in this moment its speed is 0, so there is no kinetic energy. All it has is potential energy. The potential energy is caused by the position on the Earth. So the potential energy is mass times the gravity acceleration times the height. So if we transform the kinetic energy into potential energy, 1/2 times mass times velocity squared equals mass times gravity acceleration times the height. You see that there is mass on the left, mass on the right. We can forget about the mass. It doesn't matter. Sounds strange, but it doesn't really matter the weight of the disk regarding the height that we are going to reach. What matters is the launch speed. If we are able with a lighter disk to throw it faster, then we will go higher. But not because the disk is lighter, but because we are able to throw it faster. And we have already seen that it's not exactly true, because we have to include the mass of our 1/3 of our arm. So is it false that it helps in the uphill? Not exactly. Yes, from a mechanical point of view, it doesn't really matter. But we get some help from the aerodynamic point of view. When we throw a lighter disk, we have already seen that we amplify the acceleration generated by all the aerodynamic forces. Okay, so we have more drag, more lift, more turn, more fade. More drag. Okay, that is bad, of course, but keep in mind that we are throwing uphill, so we are transforming kinetic energy into potential energy, so the speed will be lower than when we throw on flat or on downhill. So the effect is bad, but it's less bad because we are throwing at lower speeds. The disc is going uphill. The lift is going to be higher. Sorry, not the lift. The lift is the same. The lift is the same with the heavy disc and with the light disc. But the acceleration generated by this lift will be higher on the lighter disc. So this will help me to get a little bit more lift to get higher in the slope that I'm going to throw against. And we amplify the turn and the fade. And it's well known that when we throw uphill, we tend to pick up a disc that is slightly more understable. Why is it? Because when we are throwing uphill, we remember that when we throw flat, when we reach the apex, we change from the turn to the fade phase. And if we're throwing uphill, the problem is that the ground is raising under the disc. So when it reaches the apex and starts to fall, there is no time for fade. It will not gain much distance because the ground has already elevated under the disc. So we want to amplify the turn phase as much as possible. So to gain all the altitude that we can and try to increase the turn phase to gain more distance. That is why when we throw uphill, we can pick up a disc that is more understable or a lighter disc. I personally have a Jade, a standard one and a light one. And sometimes when there's heavy uphill, I throw the lighter version to get that extra lift effect and extra turn to help me gain some distance when I'm throwing really heavy uphill. So that's it. It's reasonable to use lighter discs, of course. The gain in launch speed will not be as high as we thought, because we have to include the weight of the 1/3 of the arm, but it has some aerodynamic effects that should be kept in mind. See you in Zonadiscgolf.